I know people who are graduated college and people who are out of college
Yeah,
will come to me and be like,
sense. Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I've been following you since I was in high school or since I was in middle school," which makes me feel like a fossil. but but it's also rewarding because it's like, okay, well, I'm glad I was able to to help you along.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hey, I'm Tim Barnes. You are the genre. And in every episode of this podcast, I ask great new guests about the first genre that inspired them, the first craft that they pursued, and how they feel about that first pursuit now. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little under the weather, so my voice sounds a little deeper, a little raspier. I don't know. Maybe I should be sick all the time because it sounds kind of cool. Anyway, in this episode, I'm talking to journalist and I suppose news curator is the best way to put it, Philip Lewis. Philip is one of those internet people that I don't recall exactly how I started following, but quickly became an integral part of my daily news diet. He's got a newsletter called whatimreading.net that is absolutely phenomenal and has an African-American focus on the information that it highlights. I love every conversation that I've had with a journalist off mic and on mic, anybody who writes for the page or the digital page. I find that fascinating because these are heralded positions and it's hard to remember that these are also flesh and blood people. I'm also interested in this intersection between journalism and entertainment. They clash, they intertwine, they break up, they make up. And one of the most famous cultural American institutions that rely on this intersection has been in the news lately. It's the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which the talented Amber Ruffin was supposed to host this year. You know, she's supposed to go up there like comedians do every other year and basically roast the news establishment. However, this time around, the news establishment decided at the last minute to say, you know what, we're going to scratch that part. This is just going to be a nice dinner. Like many comedians, I'm angry for Amber Ruffin, but I also think that Amber Ruffin has had the blackest experience in the entertainment industry in recent history. And it kind of ties into why I do this show. You know, Amber is one of those people who I've been lucky to work with, by the way, but she's had her own late night program on Peacock. But I believe while she was hosting that show, she was still technically writing for Seth Meyers. And she's always doing this. She's always doing the most things because nothing is guaranteed, especially for Black people, especially for Black women in the entertainment industry. And this show is ultimately about the through lines that creative people have to develop for themselves in order to feel like a complete human being, despite the multitudes of things that they have to do to get through their days. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Freddie Nunez, who created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith, who produced it. In this conversation with Philip Lewis, we talk a lot about how similar the world of comedy is to the world of journalism. It is a daring act to go on stage. It is a daring act to put your name on an article. And we also talk about some controversies that he's had in his career. It was a great conversation, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. But first, I have to remind you that You Are the Genre is a listener-supported podcast. If you enjoy it, you can leave a nice rating or review wherever you're listening to it. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter that I have associated with it. There's a link to that in your show notes and at youarethegenre.com. Free subscriptions give you daily comedic takes on the news and the latest publicly available episodes, while a paid subscription gives you a glimpse into advanced episodes of the podcast, plus other goodies. Okay, now I have to go take a sick nap, but while I do that, you're going to enjoy this conversation with Philip Lewis. I would just call you, a journalist, but also like a curator of news. Like you're one of my go-to sources to feel informed.
That's great. I mean, I appreciate you. I think curate is a really good way to describe what I try to do. So I formerly am a journalist. I do work in that space, but the reason why I curate is just because I really try to function as a opposing force to a lot of the misinformation and stuff that's out there, especially, dealing with a lot of that stuff is targeting our community, right? And it targets Black folk in general. And so I think what I try to do is make sure I can get the proper stories, the accurate stories, the correct stories out there. So that's what I like to do. That's what I've been doing for a while now.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Well, let's define like how, where does the joy, what's the spark of joy inside of what you do? Let's dive into that, because I I look through the news all the time, like for jokes and things like that, and I find it exhausting. I think anyone who works for like a late night show is exhausted, but you're not adding jokes to any of this. You are simply releasing the information. Where is the joy in that?
No, that's a good question. No, fair enough. It's funny because we actually talk about late night shows, and in particular, one of the things that we, just in our newsroom, like we'll take a look at, like, oh, look at this late night show. Usually it's Colbert, and we'll share, share a headline, and we kind of like, oh, like that's kind of cool. So we kind of sometimes we get joy out of that, right? Like sometimes we get joy. There are joys in other ways that we find, and so for me in particular, I think what I find the most joy in is just finding that people appreciate the work that I do. Like I find that rewarding. I find if people are like, okay, I don't think that this is true until Phil has verified it and confirmed it for myself. I find that to be I find it to be heartening, because it's just like, I know people, like people still care about news, right? Like no matter what happens to media, quote unquote, journalism, the field, the one thing that is a constant is that people will always be looking for information. And so sometimes there are forces, negative forces that try to take advantage of that. And flood the internet and networks with all types of nonsense. And so I think there are people like myself who do this work, and we find it rewarding to inform our communities.
A part of why you do this, is it in reaction to the way that the internet is affecting our consumption of the news? Like, were there certain cracks in the system that you noticed over the years that led into this, and do you feel like you're kind of filling in those cracks?
Yeah, so I'm a product of the internet, as people our age are, and we're able to see. We've been able to see it evolve in such a kind of odd way, and so I've been doing this sort of thing, so like the curation and informing people since without me actually putting a name to that. Since maybe 2014 or like 2015. So before, even when the internet was still fun, quote unquote, for, whatever audience, whatever we define it as fun, or social media didn't look like it did in 2015 like it does now. Yeah. But one thing that I tried to remain constant with, and I've evolved in this sort of work, is to inform and to use social media as a way of getting information to people. And so a lot of this, I was able to do this a lot during the Black Lives Matter movement. That sort of became a source for people who wanted to know what was going on, wanted to know what protests were happening, wanted to know who was the next, victim of police brutality. And sometimes the largest newsrooms didn't always know what was going on or relate to it, or didn't necessarily find it important until it started to kind of trend on social media. I try to use my platform to be able to bring awareness to these sorts of stories. For example, I was at a newsroom back in 2016, and one of my jobs was to just write sort of just stories like SEO, search engine optimization stories. And it was just, oh my goodness, it was stories all day. But there was one story that I saw. I was searching on Facebook, and I happened to come across a Facebook Live. And it was of a police officer. He was yelling at a man. The video, you could see the person in the car, but you could hear the police officer on the outside. So I just watched it. I was like, okay, let me just watch and see what's going on here, because it popped up on my Facebook Live. And it happened to be Philando Castile. Right. And so I'm watching this, like in real time. I'm watching it as it happens on live, and I'm telling my editor, like, hey, let's come take a look at it. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I remember writing about it. And that just was like, just such a insane moment. Our newsroom at that time, I was in another newsroom. I think we were probably the first ones to really pay attention to what was happening and get our story. And we got our story out there. We wanted people to know what had happened to this man. And so I've been doing that sort of work for a while now, like to the point where I know people who are graduated college, there are people who are out of college would come to me and be like, "Oh yeah," they were like, "Oh yeah, I've been following you since I was in high school or since I was in middle school," which makes me feel like a fossil. but it's also rewarding because it's like, okay, well, I'm glad I was able to to help you along in whatever way that I could.
It's interesting. I feel like, especially since the pandemic, time is so strange. Like, it feels like a fast forward button, and I'm in that exact same situation. But Philando Castile, that's a name that immediately plants me into that moment. I'll never forget that time period. If I'm not mistaken, that was the summer of 2016.
That was the summer of 2016 that I'll never forget because that was Alton Sterling, who had also was killed from police violence. That was a very, very hot. That was just a very heated summer, and the stories that we were covering, I felt like we were right in the middle of the Black Lives Matter sort of movement, and there were a lot of writers and people who were paying attention to this sort of thing, and so it was really important work to be able to get those stories in front of people, and social media plays such an integral role in that because I sometimes I think about like how many of these stories would we just have never known about if we weren't able to see these things happen on social media.
Yeah. That inflection moment, summer of 2016, Barack Obama was still president. Stranger Things came out. Bernie and Hillary are still kind of going at it. It was just, and Colbert, I think, had just taken over, just to circle back to that, had just taken over The Late Show from David Letterman, I feel like. So it's like the beginning, it's like a direct marker to this sea of change ever since. And it is surreal to think back to like, oh, a lot in America and the world has been totally altered from that point in ways that no one could have expected.
100%. It feels like every 4 years it's just like this waves. Just like it just feels like there's just so much stuff, and then I don't know. I'm in DC, like I'm based in DC, and I just recently saw a story about the Black Lives Matter mural in downtown DC. There's like a mural, a large Black Lives Matter mural that was painted during sort of that time period. I think at post. So this is post George Floyd. That is killing. That I believe that the DC mayor's office announced that they're going to paint over it. Yeah. Right. So it feels a little on the nose, right?
It's not. It's like, and we all saw it coming. And I remember I was writing for Jimmy Fallon of all people during that time, which was its own sort of surreality. But there was this swell of like, oh, I couldn't believe honestly what I was seeing in terms of like how much was happening. And arguably, the poetics of that is that it's surface level, it's paint, it's just, but there is power to erasing that as well. And I feel like with all of the DEI stuff happening right now, it's just like this massive erasure, literal erasure happening of keywords and things like that. So all of this, I'm fascinated by you because I imagine that I can just see a sliver of your place here. But in my mind, it's like, oh, you're on the Nebuchadnezzar in the Matrix, and then you're just codes of news swelling around you, and you're just organizing it and sending it to the people. Just to like focus on that sense of like where the love of this comes from. I want to figure out how you got to this point by asking the 3 questions of the show. So I'm curious to know what the first genre was that called out to you when you were a kid.
Oh man. Okay. So, unfortunately, the first genre that called out to me, and this will also show I guess how old I am. The first genre that called out to me was the Harry Potter books. Right,
the Harry Potter books. Okay, yeah.
This was pre. Obviously, this was pre before we knew everything about the transphobia. Rowling. So suffice to say, I'm not. I'm obviously I'm thrown out of that anyway. But the Harry Potter books, I mean, that for anybody who's old enough to remember, that was a phenomenon. Like Harry Potter was a serious phenomenon. Those books that my parents placed into I was already somebody who enjoyed reading, and they placed those books into my hand, and it just took you to another world, right? Like it took you to another world. I loved reading those books. I had every book. I prefer the books to the movies, and so it opened doors, I think, to my imagination. I really enjoyed them. I mean, there were 2 things that you would almost never find me without. It was a Harry Potter book and a Game Boy Color. So those are the things. Those are the things that I would have.
What were your Game Boy games?
Oh man, so I obviously had all the Pokemon. I had all of them. Every my game, all of them. I had all of them up until I grew out of it. But I had all those games, and I still remember. So I had the green Game Boy Color, and I had the this is before like light like you needed like a flashlight to look at stuff. I had you could link your Game Boy Color to a light, and it would
Oh
link.
wow! Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah,
Yeah.
and it would link. It was like a little weird flashlight. This is before your phone like lights up. This is before all that. Yeah, and it would link up, and I would have that, and I would play Pokemon Yellow all night. So that would be my thing. But yeah, it was Harry Potter. It was Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Out all those books, but also growing up in Detroit, particularly, we had African American history class, and all of my teachers were black, and a lot of the stories that I read, the Watsons Go to Birmingham, was a book that I remember just vividly remember. Watsons Go to Birmingham, Bud Not Buddy, these sorts of books that you're reading in Detroit public school, really kind of honed a lot of that for me.
Well, a few things stand out for that. It's first of all, not every black parent is giving their kids Harry Potters. That stands out to me. Like,
Sure.
like,
So some are like, oh no, that's witchcraft, throw it away. Don't bring that. No, I couldn't bring it into church. I couldn't bring the book into church. But I
that'd be
could bring
too
it
much
everywhere else.
discussion.
Yeah, that's too much.
But then
Yeah.
a love of words, a love of reading, and then with Pokemon, a love of collecting things. And so, in my mind, I'm tying that to your love of gathering things that are happening in the news, putting it into context. I imagine that if you actually had various Pokeballs of Pokemon, you would organize them and
I
that
had to
kind of
catch
thing.
every 151. I had to catch them all. Like had to catch them all. Like I took that seriously. I was deadly serious. I had to catch them all.
Is there anything story-wise in the world of Harry Potter that you connected with? I guess when I try and think about the themes of Harry Potter, there is a bit of a chosen one element, but there's also there is an exploration of news, honestly, in Harry Potter, of how things are presented. You have this character, Harry Potter, entering this world who is like stamped as with that chosen one label. He's getting special treatment. And throughout the series, it seems like there is sometimes it's about propaganda, sometimes it's about escaping a label, those kinds of things. Like what were you connecting? What character did you connect with the most, I guess?
I think so. I would probably say I connected with Harry because I didn't understand his fight. Like he was fighting snakes. I was just playing Pokemon. I'm like, like that snakes. But I thought a lot of the characters were really sort of nuanced, at least for my whatever the fifth grade brain or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I thought the characters were really nuanced and interesting. And I think I say Harry, but I think just the world of Harry Potter was a character. It brought me into a place that I could kind of see myself escaping to. It was different. It was so different.
Yeah.
And I think I would just have to say it was just the world. Like I just thought all of it, like Hogsmeade and Hogwarts and all of I think it was the Goblet of Fire that introduced like all of these other characters. So the other books, the first 3 books were more so about what was happening all at Hogwarts, but then also we were introduced to characters from like Russia and like all these other places.
Yeah.
and it opened up kind of the Hogwarts world to me. So I remember that very well. So I would just say like the Wizarding world just in general was something that was interesting to me as a young person.
Were you a very curious child? Were you always sort of going back to that theme of like cracks in the system? Were you looking for like openings into exploring and trying to figure out like what's actually going on here? Was that something that you were doing?
Yeah, I think my parents would say I was a pretty curious child. Like I was really into dinosaurs when I was younger. But I had to know every single dinosaur, like Stegosaurus, Tyrannosaurus Rex. I had to know every single one. When I was younger and I collected all of the cards, so collection, I guess, is maybe it's a tick for me. Like I would collect all of these cards. I remember when I was younger, I had this binder, and it was a National Geographic binder, and it had every single like animal you could think of. One in particular that I liked was a golden lion Tabarian. Or I think I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it's a monkey with like golden hair. I'm sure you've seen it before.
Yeah.
And I remember that one in particular, but I would have all of them. I would just try to remember all the names of these animals because I was just super into dinosaurs and animals and Pokemon and it was like Yu-Gi-Oh and like when I was younger. It was just all this stuff I just really found interesting and I would try to like commit to memory.
Yeah.
So I think my parents would probably say that I was. Like, I guess I probably was.
Were you writing any fantasy? Did like your love of Harry Potter and I guess even Pokemon too, like lead you to wanting to create worlds of your own?
Yeah, when I was in elementary school, middle school, I would write stories. Like I would just write things. Like none of them were Pulitzer Prize winning or anything, but it was just like silly, just like silly stories or things that I would write down just whatever will come to mind. And I think my parents still have some of those.
Yeah.
kind of
Like you're
stories.
drawing your own
cringe.
Pokemon. Right?
Yeah, I would cringe. I would cringe reading that stuff now, but I was like fourth grade and cared.
So with all of that in mind, what would you say the first official craft was that you pursued?
First official craft. So the thing about my family is that everybody's they're all artists
Okay.
and like in a very real way. Like my dad, like everybody can draw. Like
Okay.
my grandparent, my granddad, mom, dad, two brothers, they all can draw.
Oh.
I'm the only one that cannot draw. I cannot draw anything. Like nothing. I can draw a stick and that's about it.
Okay, maybe
But
that's
they
where the Harry
really are
Potter
talented.
parallel comes. You're like, something is off about me compared to everyone else. For Harry Potter, it's like, I know magic,
Yeah.
but you, it's like, I don't know how to draw.
Yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't my thing. And so I couldn't draw, so I couldn't tell you that. I guess it would be writing. I've always been really great with writing and reading. My mom, she'll always tell the story like, oh yeah, you started reading, like you picked up a book when you were 2 years old and you started reading. And I've just always been great with that, writing and reading. But I didn't really pursue it as a career until way later.
Well, how are you defining, your pursuit of that? We talked a little bit of you writing, short stories and, fantasy kind of things, but
Well,
it seems like that's something that kind of evolved with you over the years. Like, can you kind of put a label to the evolution of your focus on writing?
yeah, I mean, so I think I should probably say I didn't go to school for journalism.
Mm.
I didn't go to school for it. I really fell into the field, to be honest. Like I fell into the field. I didn't pursue writing in high school or college.
Got it.
Didn't really do it in that way. I was a sociology major
Okay.
because I found the study of people and trends to be interesting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I wasn't like writing. I never wrote a school paper or anything like that. Never did anything like that. It came way later when a friend of mine encouraged me to go into media in some capacity.
Mm.
Writing and reading has always been something that I've excelled at. Like I would always get high test scores on it. I guess I had all the traits of being a good journalist, but because I'm terrible at math. So that gives you a +1, like for general. I'm terrible at math. But I could read and write really well. Like I
Yeah.
will always score high on that, and that would be the only subject that I was really great at. So that's how that worked out.
What are the career paths that are open to people who have a focus on sociology? I never really considered that. I don't like what jobs does that lead to?
Basically grad school. Grad school. No, grad school, like analytics. I mean, there is a lot of research and mathematics that goes into that and statistics, which is why I didn't pursue it. Like, I went into education actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I did Teach for America. I was a terrible teacher, and I had a lot of weird jobs. Like I used to work at a dental school. I was a substitute teacher.
Uh-huh.
I did a lot of things before I got into journalism.
I find that journalism is a magical word that I don't always know the ins and outs of, and I don't think most people know the ins and outs of what it means to be a journalist. And whenever I talk to a journalist, I'm kind of surprised by how real and down to like, oh, you're just a normal person, but I kind of herald it. Like maybe it's because of the Superman thing, like him being a reporter by day and Superman by night or whatever. But the concept of falling into it, and then also it feels like something where it is a profession that almost similar to stand up. Anyone can start doing in a way, but I don't know if that's true or not. Like, do you need a degree to be a journalist?
Oh no. Journalism. So you're right. You're hitting the nail on my head, because journalism, I always tell people, is a trade. It's something that you learn to do in as you kind of move forward, right? So, I mean, I don't begrudge anybody, obviously, that has to do journalism, because it gives you a leg up in a lot of ways. Like you know what the heck somebody's talking about when they're talking about the inverted pyramid, for example, or like it helps you with like being on TV and all these sorts of things. But ultimately, journalism is a trade.
Yeah,
it's something that can be learned. I learned how to be a journalist in the newsroom, so through experiences, through actually talking with people, and through reading, and through seeing what other people would do, and having mentors to be able to do that. So yeah, now look, stand up is hard. I'm gonna say stand up is hard. But yeah, it's a trade. Like we all have the ability to be able to do it. It's just how you go about it is key.
So was there any like trepidation on your end when you started to go into that field?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my journalism career started September of 2015 when I became an intern at the Huffington Post at the time. Now it's HuffPost. But before that, I applied to, oh my goodness, at least, I'm just going to say 100. I applied to 100 roles in journalism, and they were all like, you have no experience. Like, you cannot, what are you doing? Like, you have no experience. HuffPost, the person who hired me at the time, Amanda Turkle, she was like, okay, well, you have a really interesting background and resume. You know, we might be interested in giving you a shot. And I told her, like I think I sent an email, like, I don't have any experience in journalism. Is that okay? I think they were just like, look, that's what a fellowship is for. That's why I'm really big on internships and fellowship, because you have no idea that the amount of talent that you're missing out when you don't give people a proper shot. And they gave me a shot, and I was just like, look, and this is my first time moving away from Detroit, like moving away from Michigan, like in serious, and for a very serious reason. So I was just like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I'm here in Detroit, just kind of hanging out. So I packed up my car and I moved to DC to take this internship and try my best. And I was terrible. I was obviously like I was.
What made you bad at it? It's just sort of like you didn't know the keywords, you didn't know, the writing system was a little different. And
I mean, I didn't even know like I didn't know where to start. Like I was basically just I wasn't plagiarizing, but I was trying to copy what other people were doing.
Yeah.
Like as far as how a story should look and how it's structured, what I should be like, what are the main points of the interview I should be pointing out, how to create a headline, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I learned all of this through trial and error and through being on the job. Like I learned all of this. I had editors who were basically like, this is terrible. Mark it up.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the thing is, like, you can't necessarily be offended by that, because that is the only way you're going to get better if you are serious about pursuing this field. So, I just remember, Amanda's like, she's like this tall. Amanda's like 5'2", and I'm a taller guy, and so it would just be so funny. I remember kneeling at her desk where she'd be like, hey, come over here, ask some questions, some thoughts or questions about your story. I'd be like this guy, like yelling at her desk, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, this is bad. So yeah, I mean, but anyway, you just learn, and you get better.
Yeah.
And that's just what, that's what I learned from that internship.
The first genre was stuff like Harry Potter. You started really being into writing. You're writing your own, what kids kind of write, fantasy stuff. At some point you bridge into an interest in sociology, and then by accident, you kind of fall into journalism. When did you fall in love with journalism? I guess is the next question.
No, good question. I would say at the end of that internship, I was like, you know what? Because I was really able to do some good work with the internship. And I felt like this is where my skills actually were married with something that I was actually able to do. So I was like, this is the field I want to be in. Like, I want to stay in this field. How can I do it? Like, what do I need to do? And one thing that I noticed that separated me, because I think for all journalists or burgeoning journalists or whomever, early career journalists, you always have to find that thing that separates you from the rest of everybody else. Because everybody out there, it's even more so now than before. Like even back in 2015, we were getting there, but now it's like even more important to find your own voice and to find the stories that are interesting to you and that you can cover. So I decided that like I wanted to be able to platform other people's stories that might not be platformed in any other capacity, right? So stories that not just stories about Black folk that are that are missed, right? But stories of poor Black folk, right? Or story of socioeconomic, because in this field, there's people tend to come from the same sort of background in this field, and that means that your lens is usually coming from what you know.
Yeah.
And that kind of creates a lot of biases in how we cover and what we do, because I don't have this sort of traditional sort of Ivy League background coming from upper middle class as a lot of journalists do, to be frank. I wanted to make sure that I was able to tell these stories and to platform people that otherwise might not be. So that's when I fell in love with it at the end of my internship.
That feels like the perfect time to have that focus, because especially now it seems like similar to what we were just talking about, like this parallel between comedians and journalists. It feels like your personality has to lead more than ever as a journalist. Like you can't be a semi-invisible face behind a newspaper. Like the only way to survive is to have a personality that can be sustainable if that newspaper gets bought by another one, or, all kinds of stuff happens. On my end, when I started doing stand-up, there was some fear in terms of giving myself that official stamp, putting myself out there and being like, this is what I am. I'm a comedian. I'm the face that is responsible for everything that I say on stage. That's a big move. That's a big step. Even like in terms of like your family and friends and things, when it's like, oh, wow, Phil, you're the...
Well, I think there are actually a lot of parallels between journalism and stand-up, actually, what you're saying. Like I know a conversation that is always had is, man, these influencers are eating our lunch.
Yeah.
Right? Like I know, like for stand-up, like it might be, oh, okay, well, man, there's some comedian, some internet comedian that's online, and they got like the fact that they have 100 million Instagram followers means that they can get opportunities, right? That maybe other stand-up comedians can't. So, and it sometimes can be similar for journalism, right? Like there are news creators who are not technically journalists, right? But they get the news out there in ways, and we saw a lot of this the last election, right? Where people weren't quite journalists, but were able to push certain stories and narratives, and they were fed these sorts of stories as opposed to quote unquote traditional journalists, whatever. So there's a lot. I see a lot of parallels in that way. To be honest, I don't think that news creators and journalists are necessarily clashing. I don't always see it as a clash. I think that it's incumbent on politicians and on us to ensure that we are reaching out, to ensure that we are covering the story that we need to be covering, and reaching out to the politicians or whomever. Like we have to still do our job, like no matter who is doing what. But there's a lot of parallels, I think, between that, like between the two.
Yeah, because it feels like you're always kind of negotiating, and I guess the sense that I'm getting from this conversation, some other conversations I've had with journalists, is that it really is securing a level of trust.
Yeah,
you're not a comedian until other comedians recognize you as a comedian, sort of thing. And it feels like you're not a journalist until you're at the journalist function, and people are like, okay, yeah, you're.
Well, what I think what I hate most about it is like sometimes I just wish the work can just be the work. Like I have conversations like this all the time, and people are just like, do I have to build a brand? Like, do I have to do? Like, I don't want to do this. I just want to be able to write my story and move on, or write it and just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
and I think it is true that really, really talented, like just you can be an amazingly talented journalist, but that doesn't necessarily mean like the newsrooms of today are going to be looking out for you or looking for you.
Yeah.
And that presents some challenge, especially in today's age, as you mentioned, it's at home BI, and newsroom as they shutter and get smaller and figure out what to cut. We lose a lot of really great stories, at least on that front. But now people are creating, their own Substacks and creating their own media platforms, which is it's a good thing, but it's not all, but also it's not extremely sustainable. I don't think everybody can do it.
Everybody can't do it. And maybe I am curious to know how you feel about this, because I'm maybe at the end stages of my deep mourning of some element of the monoculture. And the double-sided coin of it all is that the monoculture never had a lot of room for too many Black people. So I'm always analyzing my love for what that is or what that was. And that's why someone like you becomes so important, because you are a curator at the end of the day. You are someone who's like, if you trust me, these are the things that I'm reading. That's the name of your newsletter, what I'm reading.
Yep.
It feels like you are someone who has created something that can stand the test of time. Is that your hope?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm hoping that but I also kind of wish like it didn't have to be like that. I wish like we had a healthy, because honestly, like my career is sort of a response to all of the craziness that's happening right now. Like I'm a response to it, and so like people follow my newsletter because they're just like a lot of times they're tired of having to be on social media. But there are people who love to go to social media to find news, and that's how it used to be. But now it's like a Nazi platform now, and like all this, it's like it's a insane platform. Like my For You page is just it's porn and all this. Some people just want to just get the news, and so that's my newsletter is sort of a response to that. So I mean, I'm really grateful for what I do. I wish it wasn't so necessary, because I think we are a healthier society when we can find when we can find the news that's important to us, and we're not sifting through so much of the BS, because it's so hard to find out what's true. Like, and you have people, obviously you have the misinformation, but you have disinformation, which people are actively pushing things that look real.
Yeah.
And then that's not even talking about AI, where we are with that. Like we're like only in the beginning stages of what this can look like. So I'm grateful for what I do, but it can be tough.
Before we get to the last question, I guess this is I don't remember the details of this. I just remember that there was some controversy with you, Phil. I don't know what it was, but it feels like a good thing to talk about because of stepping up to being a public presence, wanting people to, people need to be able to rely on you as a source. And the internet never forgets, I guess, is the...
No.
So what the hell were you doing? You were like, you were pretending to be African? Is that what it was? Like, what was going
okay, yeah. Because I was thinking, like, okay, is this a couple? Because I actually, like, contrary to popular belief, I have, like, summer controversies sometimes. Like, actually, I'm like, I'm like, okay, if you're talking about, like, the one time I got into it with this celebrity or just something, okay. So, in college, I have like a couple Nigerian friends, and I was using Twitter a lot, and a lot less formally. Like I was using it, talking to my friends, just kind of have fun on it and troll and stuff like that, like people do. Although I would say trolling back then is not quite how trolling is now. Trolling now is like it's a whole different ball game now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically the gist of it, I was just joking with them. I don't even quite remember what I was saying, but basically I was just joking with them and saying like, oh yeah, because they were Nigerian, I was just poking fun at them, and they're like, oh yeah, can't quite remember what I'd said, but the gist of it was I use a word that is like that is that's like negative, like a negative word that they use. And I, but this, I think the context of it is this is, just kind of me joking with my friends, but it's also, obviously when I used social media back then, I wasn't expecting to be like this sort of thing.
Yeah, this is
Like,
before you became the person that you are. That's what's so fascinating about the internet. Like, even as you described, like these websites don't look the same month by month, year by year, and yet it is officially you. It's very bizarre for me to think that, in the future, if I have grandchildren, they can look at whatever random stuff I was writing on a friend's wall in high school. Like that.
And so like when I'm like, okay, like when I'm 19, I'm like, oh, okay, like this is, if you could go back and change everything you could say when you're like 19, like most people probably would. But anyway, people found it because Janet Jackson had said something about Kamala Harris like not being black or something.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it was something. Anyway, I just shared I think I shared the story, whatever. And they just went on like a furious search of like finding anything about me. Yeah, and so now there's like a subset of people who think I'm like Nigerian or something because like there's like a subset of people who think I'm from.
Oh yeah, so you got the reverse Sean King. For Sean King, it's like
I'm the reverse Sean King. Yeah, I'm the reverse Sean King. So I look back on it, I'm like, man, yeah. So anyway, so I apologize for it because I think it is important to at least acknowledge like, okay, like yeah, like that wasn't great, I'm fine with that. I think like we're in a society that frowns upon like apologizing for things and trying to explain yourself. That is normally what people try. I think your PR like tells you not to do that, like tells you to double down. But no, like I did, I wouldn't do that today. I wouldn't do I wouldn't do a lot of things that I did when I was 19 at my age today. So, but yeah, I mean, now I will say I kind of do regret feeding into it though, because a lot of it now I think is trolling, and I think is it's some of it is made by bots now too, which is not great, and it's like all in my social media feed, which is not ideal. But yeah, it was some controversy. I've been through several controversies.
Who are these celebrities you mentioned? I don't know how I missed that you got into it.
There's one I'm just gonna leave alone.
Okay.
I'm gonna just leave that alone because I do not need this person's group coming after me.
It was the Queen Bee.
But yeah, it was somebody, but yeah, I mean, it kind of came and it went, as controversies tend to do. But yeah, I mean that's really all it is. I mean, I just I will clear the air. I am not Nigerian. I was born in Detroit. My parents were born in Detroit. My grandparents are from Tennessee, Alabama. And,
yeah, you give me the full.
I'm all the way through. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
You might be. I mean, if you go far back enough, you might be Nigerian. But okay, now.
Yeah. Well, sure, fair enough. Yeah.
So the last question is about how you feel about that first pursuit now. I'm kind of focusing on sociology as the first pursuit. I don't know how you feel about that, but it seems like, speaking of the internet, and I think you do use your sociology skills, because sometimes I feel like the right moment to drop a piece of news on the internet. Like, when like like you find the maximum interest moment to drop something, and it's always fast because sometimes it's like cutting edge news sometimes, but sometimes simply because you post it is why I focused on it, and I'm like, oh, this has been out for a couple hours, maybe for most of the day or something like that. But when you look back at that interest, how do you feel about it now, and in comparison to your focus on journalism and curating the news?
Yeah, well, I actually do think about this a lot. Sociology has, I think, helped me kind of understand trends, because I am focusing on trending news a lot. Sometimes there are stories that are out for a little while, but maybe they just don't have the right perspective. I shouldn't say right perspective, but they don't have like sometimes social media editors have a hard time trying to pull out what is most important about a story. And that's what I try to do. Like, for example, you have some of your I don't know, some newsroom will just post like the headline and the story and just push it out there.
Yeah.
Usually I'm reading that story to see, well, okay, what is the most important thing about the story? Because it's not always the headline. So I want to pull that out, see what's interesting. Why would my audience even care about what's going on? Pull that out, and usually that's how people are able to see kind of my stories. And yeah, I try to put a little bit more thought. I don't always succeed at it. Like I don't always succeed at it. Sometimes, I mean, I think it's important for people to understand that journalists are just as susceptible to misinformation and disinformation, just like anybody else. Like we are human. Like we make mistakes. People make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like it happens. But what we try to do is we try to make sure that we are following up and that we are checking our sources and things like that. So we do try to take a step beyond, what you might be reading online. We try to take a step beyond and figure out what's going on from there.
Are you so into this that you truly do see this as the rest of your life? I don't know how. I mean, I'm kind of at a crossroads too. Like when you mentioned that whole thing of like, oh, now suddenly there's people who've graduated college since this thing that I did. I feel the same way about my own career, where there's that sort of surreal, like, oh wow, I'm older now. Like, how, is this what is this me forever? Is this me forever?
I don't know. I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy journalism. I enjoy uplifting these stories, and I mean that's what people have come to expect of what I do. I would prefer to continue to do it. I just don't know if it always look like it. Just won't always look like this. It will continue to evolve. People eventually. I think people will tire of social media and will tire of all these things. So it will look differently, but I hope to always be able to continue to tell a story, no matter how that may look.
Do you ever think about in the time before the internet, if you were doing exactly what you do now before, there are so many articles being blasted, that you would kind of be a crazy person, like picking up every newspaper, cutting out articles, and I guess sending it through the mail,
Yeah, just sending it through the mail. But I mean, I think back then, I don't know. I mean, the Associated Press has been around forever, but we don't consume, like we consume news nationally now in a way that I don't think we ever have.
Yeah.
Right. Like we consume, like I know what's happening to a family in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. That was never.
Like that's never really been like that. Like obviously, like the big moments, like obviously, like somebody from Detroit knows what happened to Rodney King, right?
Yeah.
Or like things like that. But I mean, if you go even like before like TV and things like that, like we have access to more information than ever.
Yeah. And
sometimes there's a debate, like, is this a good or bad thing? Like we need to know everything at all times, via our phone. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess, I mean, if you were to explain this to somebody 50 years ago, they'd be like, huh, this sounds crazy.
Yeah. At some point, you need to put the Cerebro helmet down.
Yeah.
How do you stay sane in this process? What are some things that you do?
Yeah, so I'm really into Pilates. I do Pilates at least once or twice a week. Pilates is my thing. I've been doing. I'm about 300 classes in.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's just it's an hour for me to just kind of put my phone away because you cannot be on your phone at the same time. You will hurt yourself. So yeah, Pilates. I enjoyed that. I enjoy basketball. I try to take some time for myself, but yeah, I would say that's mostly it.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope that you have I hope you collect all the Pilates positions the way you collected Pokemon when you were a kid.
Thanks, man. This has been super fun. I appreciate you.
Yeah.